to another episode, a new season actually, of Between You and Me. Guys, if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I'd like to let you know that we have officially begun video footage of Between You and Me. This has been something that I've wanted to do for so long, so it's really such a happy moment for me to be able to pull it off. But if you're wondering why I'm lacking a little bit of an excitement, it's because I actually did record this episode like 2 hours ago, and this piece of machinery, if you're watching on YouTube, this piece of machinery right here literally sucks. I don't recommend it if you guys are in the podcast industry. It's terrible. It's the Zoom PodTrack P4. It malfunctions nonstop, continuously. It's literally the worst ever in the whole entire world. It just didn't save my audio file. Right after I finished recording the episode for the very first time, I checked my SD card plugged into my computer. File doesn't exist. It wasn't even corrupt. It literally did not exist. And I was so flabbergasted how that could be possible. Turns out it is. I really don't know what happened, but yeah. So, regardless, I am a little sad that I have to re-record this episode same day because I just needed to get it done today. But I am still happy to be here with you guys, and I'm happy to be starting this new season off on a bang. Seriously, on a bang. I'm gonna close the curtains behind me if you guys are watching, because I just feel like the lighting looks a little wonky, but I'm very happy to be with you guys. If you're listening, head over to youtube.com/betweenyouandmepod. I think probably should have gotten that down ready to say. I think it's Between You and Me Pod or Between You and Me Podcast. But if you are watching, you'll see my laptops here. I think I need to make this setup a little more cohesive, but I did want to start recording this episode and not feel like so much pressure for how the video turns out, because it really is just a personal time for you and me to talk together. Hopefully over time throughout the season I can upgrade, add some things, make it look a little more professional, a little cuter, but I didn't really have any other place, and I don't have a studio, so where else would I do it but my comfortable ass bed where I record the audio podcasts anyways. I always look just like, I mean, I don't look as cute as I do now, but I always sit like this when I record my audio podcasts. So I thought, why not show you guys through video that this is how I am? And in the future, hopefully we'll have some guests on, and both of us can be sitting here cozy and talking about whatever the hell we're going to talk about this season. That's for me to know and for you guys to find out. But for today, we are going to be talking about a subject that I think is really important and actually affects a lot of different aspects of our lives, which I'm going to touch on, and it is the idea of self-perception. Before we begin, if you guys are watching on video, don't forget to subscribe, because this is a new channel now. We need to take all of you who are listeners and go subscribe to the YouTube so you'll keep up to date with the video episodes, and then also, check out the Instagram, which is at Between You and Me Pod. That's where you guys are going to be able to keep updated with me, okay? Now, since I can show you guys, my beverage today is some cranberry juice. I was going to have some Coke, but I don't know. I just decided not to, and I decided to opt for some juice instead. So grab a beverage if you're watching, grab a snack if you're watching. If you're listening, no problem. It's just the original form and way of doing it anyways. But self-perception, that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm a little disconcerted because I did just literally 2 hours ago have this conversation with you guys, and now I have to repeat myself. But I'm hoping it will flow better because I already said it, so it probably should. So I think this subject is really important, and it came to me in a vision. I'm just kidding. It came to me at a time where I was very unconscious of the way that my perception of myself affected my reality. It affected my day-to-day life, it affected my actions, and it affected my mental health for the most part, which is actually how I even came to the idea of speaking about this subject is because although I talk so much about mental health, I talk so much about different things like that, I don't really touch, at least I think, I can't remember all my episodes, but I don't really touch so much on your perspective of yourself. What I normally talk about, which also coincides with this, is your beliefs. And that can be about the world, that can be about a certain subject, that can be about anything. But specifically today, we're talking about our beliefs about ourself. So that's exactly what self-perception is. It's the psychological concept that involves how we view ourselves and what kind of person we think ourselves to be. Okay? And there's 3 major components in that, which I've written down, and they are self-image, which is how someone perceives themselves in life, and self-esteem, which we hear about a lot, which is the value that we attach to ourselves and whether or not we see ourselves in a positive light. And lastly, there's the ideal self, and this is the self that you want to be, what you wish to be. Your values, beliefs, talents, and everything you find desirable about yourself. So when it comes to your self-perception, there's 2 ends of the spectrum. There is the side where you are just extremely hard on yourself. You don't think so good of yourself. You don't have that many great perspectives on yourself. And then there is the self-perception that you think you're the best person in the world. You think that you're, extremely intelligent, extremely good looking, smart, and that would be kind of coinciding with a really big ego or narcissism. And as a collective, I think we all want to be somewhere in the middle and probably, hopefully, more on the positive side. But what we don't realize is a lot of the times, especially in our day and age with how easy it is to compare ourselves to other people, to their successes, to, experience trauma in our lifetime. I think there's, more than 80% of people in our generation that have experienced trauma in their childhood. And these things will change your perspective on not only the world, not only the things around you, but also on yourself. So this can happen with how you grew up, how your parents took care of you, how, if you were bullied in school, if you weren't given the right amount of support in certain areas of your life. Your self-perception can change based on what people have told you about yourself. If you chose to believe that, if you chose to completely go against it. Your traumas, like I said, failed relationships too can make such a big impact on your self-perception, because if, let's say, somebody cheated on you in the past, a lot of the times we sit back and think to ourselves that we weren't worthy of love, and that's why somebody went and put their love somewhere else, So there's a lot of different reasons why we end up thinking negative things about ourselves, but the issue with it is that once you start thinking negatively about yourself in certain aspects, then you start acting in a way that portrays those negative aspects. It's a paradox of thinking negative things, believing those negative things, and then acting in a way that reinforces those negative thoughts about yourself. So here's the thing. I went through an experience, honestly, not one experience, multiple experiences where I've judged myself really negatively for things that weren't as much in my power, I guess you could say. And what negative self-perception looks like in a person is when you judge yourself extremely negatively, when you're constantly comparing yourself or dwelling on the past, constantly critiquing yourself, and the self-talk that you have is framed in a way that affects your self-esteem. Okay? Honestly, not very long ago, I had a quote unquote relapse of anxiety. I feel like that's a strange way to say it, because relapsing, you're like, oh, but like you're not addicted. Da, 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 da. I think my body is, though. I think my body is addicted to anxiety, and that's the problem, because it's so wired to function in this way that after I've felt calm for so long and I experience that high level of anxiety again, the best way I can describe it is a relapse, because it lasts for like not just a day, like a couple of weeks. And thank goodness this time, I mean, it's because I've done a lot of work on self-soothing, but like this time it was like a couple weeks where I wasn't feeling, my best. But the point of me bringing that up is that during this time frame, like I said, I was experiencing a lot of anxiety. I was reintroduced to a subject that I had thought about the first time around that I was having this level of anxiety in the past couple of years. Because before that, I was on like a pretty long hiatus of not feeling super anxious since like COVID times. But it reintroduced me to the subject of the way that I think about myself. The whole idea of anxiety is that your mind and body are reacting too intensely to something that is triggering you to not feel safe. So it's putting you in fight or flight mode when you're not actually in danger. You're not actually like about to literally get mauled by a bear, but that's how you feel like. And it could be for multiple reasons. Some people, it could be when you go into a public situation, that's how you feel like. Or, if you're worried about the state of your job, you might feel like that. Mine has more to do with my relationships, but also a significant amount of my anxiety comes from career as well. Basically, during this time frame, I was so like hyper focused on the negatives in my life. And not only that, but it came from the source of me feeling negatively about myself, specifically about my anxious self. I hated the fact that I was anxious. I hated the fact that I couldn't, take myself out of it immediately and like calm myself down, like talk myself out of my anxiety. I hated how I acted when I was anxious. And most of all, I hated how I affected other people's lives when I was anxious. Now, me hating all those parts of myself was me confirming that like, no, I don't like you. Like I literally was telling myself, because hate it or love it, anxiety is a part of me, and it has been since I was a child. You guys can listen to the anxiety episode. I think it was my very first episode. And it's not about, hating it or wishing it away or doing something to make it go away. In that moment, it was about accepting myself. And I just literally, it took me so long to get to a point where I could accept myself and like forgive myself for feeling this way in certain aspects of my life, because it's just like, it's not my fault. And the worst thing you can do to yourself is talk badly to yourself in those moments, because that's not going to take you out of an anxious spiral being like, fuck you. Like, why do you feel like that, Alex? Like, why are you da 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 da? So in this time frame, I came across a video on YouTube, and it was almost like it was sent from the YouTube gods, or just God himself, truly, because it had about 6 views. Not 6 views. The channel had 6 subscribers. I just looked today. I can add a little like screenshot of the video, but it was literally like not a viral video to pop up on my explore page, you know what I mean? And it had 100 views, I think. It was this girl talking about the importance of self-perception. And I sat there and I watched it with like me just having gone through such a hard time with my anxiety, and it was like nothing actually happened, right, in my life. Like it was just my mind creating this anxiety that was super hard for me to deal with throughout those couple of weeks. So I was sitting there and I was listening to this girl talk about self-perception and how important it was to recognize the things that you believe about yourself and how it can change you, the way you feel, the way you act. And it was almost like a clicking point for me. Although I had been taught, I went to therapy, like I had been taught so many times, like you have to accept yourself, you have to, acknowledge yourself, value yourself, like all these things. And then as I was listening to that, I was like, damn, like it really sunk in. And I don't know why it took her talking about it for it to sink in, but it did. And it made me understand, like, I need to change the way that I think about myself, and not just myself, but specifically my anxious self. I need to hold myself up to a higher, like, esteem, like I can't sit here and just continue to hate a certain part of myself that's just not gonna disappear. With that being said, that was a big turning point for me. I was able to reflect a lot in that time frame about how my perception on myself played such a big part in how I approached the world, how I approached, carrying myself, how easy it is for these negative thoughts and negative ways of thinking about yourself can change your approach to life. And that's what actually inspired me to talk about this today. And I'm not saying that I have a perfect perception of myself now, but I am saying I'm so extremely aware, or trying to be at least, much more aware of like how I think about myself and how I like consider different parts of me and can actually see the good in it. I sat back later, like a week after that time frame, and thought to myself, like, you know what? I'm grateful for this anxiety to a certain extent, because it shows me things that I need to work on, things that I need to heal. Because like some people don't get anxiety. Some people don't experience that. Some people are on the opposite side of the spectrum where they just suppress maybe their feelings and are not as comfortable acknowledging maybe things that happened in their childhood, things that, happened in past relationships that made them turn out the way that they are now. But because I'm in a situation where I can't ignore it, I feel this anxiety every day, I'm put in a position to be able to work on it. And that was such a good mindset that I came to after, because I was like, damn, like I'm looking at this differently. I've never thought about my anxiety in this way before. Being grateful for it, being grateful for a part of myself that I always hated, basically. So I want to talk to you guys about how your negative self-perception can really get in the way of your life in 2 examples. I'm talking about these examples because this is where they affect me the most, but this can be adjusted and thought of in any aspect of your life, right? I want to talk about how it can affect relationships in your work life. Specifically, relationships, I'm going to start off with, first of all, it's so unconscious. So I want you guys to like be aware of that, because it's not something that like you're doing it, you're acting upon it with this negative self-perception and being like, oh yeah, like I know I'm doing that, but I'm still going to do it. It's like you act in a way because you are triggered by something. You feel like this sense of defensiveness that comes out of you. And when it comes to relationships, normally the way that these things are brought up is during conflict. So conflict is so natural and normal in relationships, and I don't think the conflict itself, depending on what it is, obviously, but I don't think the conflict itself is the problem. I think it is how you react and or how you respond. Reactions sometimes we can't control, but if our body is just reacting, our mind is just reacting, and we control our responses, then that's okay. Now, chances are, if you are operating with a negative self-perception, you're reacting and not responding. You're going with your immediate gut instinct of defensiveness, anger, frustration, icing people out, these types of things, which don't help you in relationships. So situations like this can be an eye-opener for negative self-perception, and it's probably why a lot of people have relationships as triggers towards their anxieties, their stress, their anger, their fear, because it is such a reflection of who you are, and it kind of makes you, like, again, without a choice, it makes you sit in a position where you have to be aware and respond to how you choose to deal with it. So for example, during conflicts and in relationships, sometimes you will be operating from an unconscious belief that you're not good enough. I feel like that's normally where issues with a negative self-perception come up, is a lot of the times we grow up or have situations where we don't feel worthy of love. We don't feel like we deserve it. We don't feel like we're capable of having a good, healthy love. These are all beliefs that you have about yourself that will manifest in your relationships and show up when you're in an activated state. And that happens during conflict for the most part. When you're all happy-go-lucky and having a good time, you're not sitting there and being like, oh my God, I don't feel worthy of love. I don't feel da-da-da-da. No. It happens during conflict, and that's why sometimes in relationships, conflict brings out the worst in people, and then you have one of those relationships that's super high and super low, and we don't want that, right? We want steadiness. But what can happen is you're put in a position where, you know, you're arguing with your partner, and then you're thinking to yourself, like, why do they think that they're better than me? Why are they telling me something that's wrong about myself? You know, they think this, they think that. And this is all defensiveness. This is like energy coming out of you, like thinking, I don't want to acknowledge the things that are wrong about myself because they are not acknowledging the things that are wrong about themselves. And they think that they're better than me. And if we dissect that a little bit, really what's going on is you feel like you're not good enough for this person. So in return, you're sitting there and you're becoming defensive because you want to show up in a way or prove to them, I guess, that you are good enough. So you're going to fight for your point to be seen. You're going to fight to be right in that situation instead of, which would be a healthier way to go about it, compromise, understand, you know, let your ego go and don't say, you know, oh, well, I'm better than you and I'm this and I'm that. You'll be much more understanding. You'll be able to communicate better. But we don't realize that in reality, it's these thoughts that we have about ourselves that are holding us back. Some other examples in relationships that come from like certain beliefs are like, if you are upset that your partner isn't helping you with the dishes, let's say. I feel like that's a pretty common one. You will maybe lash out, get angry, get upset at the fact that they didn't think to go and help you. Or maybe you've asked them multiple times, like, can you help me with this? And they haven't, you know, taken the initiative to do it. Sometimes you'll be sitting there and your perception on yourself is that you're not worthy of their extra attention or time, when in reality, maybe that's not the case. Maybe there's a lot behind, you know, closed doors that happens in your partner's world that's not making them aware. But because now the story that you've built in your mind based on your negative self-perception is that you're not worth their extra attention or time, this is going to show up in your actions. This is going to show up in the way that you approach the situation. It's going to show up in the way that you try to communicate it to this person, instead of it just being, they didn't help you with the dishes. Do you see where I'm getting at here? Another example could be that they didn't send you an update, send you a text on time. And I'm very guilty of this one. When you have this negative perception, you're going to perceive that as us not feeling important enough for them to go take time out of their day to update you. You might see it as a lack of respect from your partner, right? When again, this could be a completely different situation on your partner's end and have nothing to do with you. This is also personalization, which is something different where everybody's actions mean something about you. But in the same breath, it's also your perception of yourself manifesting into how you believe your partner thinks about you. Once again, these things will show up in the way you choose to explain it. Sorry, my window's open because it gets so hot with this big light in my room, and I don't know if the mic's picking up, but there's just music and cars blasting behind me. But anyways, what I was saying is these situations affect the way that we show up in our relationships, and if you're not aware of how your negative perception affects the story that you create in your mind about yourself and about your partner, it takes away your ability to effectively communicate, learn, grow from the relationship. And it also puts you in a situation where you're in a continuous cycle because you're clinging on to these beliefs about yourself, which make you cling on to the beliefs that you think your partner has about you. And then sometimes your partner will begin to think the way that you are thinking that they will. Okay, this is getting confusing. Sometimes your partner will start to act in the way that you're fearful of them believing. But it's because you're so sure in yourself that, one, they don't respect you, they don't respect your time. Right? So you're continuously putting up the argument that they're doing this, and this, that's not respecting your time and not respecting you, and they're not showing up for you. Let's say they're not making enough time for you. So you keep bringing that up over and over again. And now they're so bombarded with this negative story that you're building up about the relationship that they do want to take space from you. You see what I mean? Okay, now moving on to how this negative perception can affect your work life. Now, this is actually pretty important because your perception of yourself can seriously impact what you think you're capable of, okay? It can change your belief in your intelligence, your belief in your capabilities, your work ethic, and your ability to learn. So if you're in a position where you're making a change in your career or let's say you're coming out of high school and you're figuring out what you want to do with your life, you're not going to shoot for the highest possible outcome for yourself if you don't believe that you're capable of doing it. If you don't believe you can start a new business, if you don't believe you can be an entrepreneur, if you don't believe you can create a lifestyle where you'll be happy and then also work a 9-to-5, you're not going to choose these career paths or these options for yourself because you don't think you're capable of doing it. And that's the most damaging thing about a negative perception of yourself, is that it'll force you to miss out on chasing new opportunities, growing within a certain industry. Like, it'll stop you from thinking that you are capable of doing something. This is such a crippling feeling, truly. And I've done this to myself so many times when it comes to my career as well. And it sucks because time doesn't stop for you. So if you're continuously living your life feeling like you're not capable of doing something and then it stops you from actually trying, you're going to look back when you're 50, 60, 70 years old and feel so regretful for not pursuing the things that you actually wanted to do but just didn't believe in yourself enough to do them. Something that I walked away from when I was listening to that video that I was talking about on YouTube, that the girl was speaking about self-perception, was the fact that your traumas and your insecurities aren't meant to be with you forever, and that you can't continue your whole life walking over eggshells and like wishing that you were built differently so that you were capable of doing something, or wishing that you weren't so scared of doing something else so that you could go and pursue that dream, or wishing that you didn't feel insecure about a certain aspect of your life so that you could wear that outfit that you wanted to wear. Like, we're here to grow. We're here to change. We're here to adapt. And if you keep yourself in the bubble that your mind has created, if you keep yourself in the like thought process that you're not good enough to go and do something that you want to do, you're going to stay there. Now, what we want to all do, and what I'm trying to do, is change your negative self-perception to a positive one. You want to believe in yourself. You want to like sit back and be proud of your accomplishments, be proud of who you are, be proud that, you know, although we're all imperfect people, we're all capable of doing some good things, right? So how I'm trying to change my perspective on myself and how I'm trying to just love myself a little bit more is being overly positive. And this is my advice. I have more advice, but this is one of my pieces of advice on how to adapt our minds into thinking more positively about ourselves, is to be overly positive. If you're recognizing that you have a negative self-perception about yourself, these are unconscious negative thought patterns that we have developed over our lifetime that we have the ability to change, but we need to be drastic about it. We need to sit back and catch every single time, or try to catch every single time we feel like we're going down a negative spiral, a negative thought process about ourselves, and instantly stop it. Instantly stop this negative thought. For example, I start thinking, you know, why, and this is a common thought, why am I doing YouTube when I don't feel like I'm capable of ever creating success out of it? When I don't feel like I can make good videos? When I don't feel like da-da-da-da? Stop that thought and then start reminding yourself of 5 things that make you capable of going to do that. That prove that you're creative enough, that you're passionate enough, that you have the skills, that you have the ability to learn how to improve. Like, there's so many more good things than negative things about yourself, but we tend to hyper focus on these negative things because it's the way that we have adapted based on literally your neural pathways have changed and just only computed all the negative shit to have meaning and the positive things to kind of slip your mind. So if we start to be overly positive, if we start to push this positive, you know, thought process about ourselves into our minds on a day-to-day basis, and then also counteract those negative thoughts with positive ones, we're going to be able to rewire the way. There's literally no way someone's mowing the lawn right now. Guys, every annoying thing that it could have possibly happened today, me losing my footage, me literally having to get up. I don't know if you guys noticed, audio listeners or visual listeners. I don't know if you guys noticed, I had to get up and change my battery pack because my battery died. Like, literally, I had to close the window now because the fucking people are mowing their lawns at fucking 7 p.m. Like, I don't understand. This is life, baby. Not everyone's got a studio on their hands with perfectly soundproof walls. Now my battery's about to die again. Anyways, okay. If you're living... What the fuck was I saying? You need to focus basically on the positive shit. And you need to rewire the way that you see things about yourself, the way you see things about the world. And that's going to entirely change the way you show up in the world. Because now if you're focusing on what you are capable of, what you're worth, your value, you know, be your personal hype man. If you're hyping yourself up continuously, don't worry, you won't become one of those egotistical, like, narcissists. You will only feel more empowered to go out in the world and do things that you've always wanted to do and not be afraid to learn and to fail and to try again, and to do new things and to put faith in love and to trust people more and to understand other people's perspectives. It can only do better for you to think better about yourself. Also, please try your best to not compare yourself to others, not to beat yourself up too much. Once again, when these negative thoughts come up over and over again, shut them down, replace them with something positive. It's really, really easy in this day and age to compare yourself to people because we're on social media all the time. Turn your phone off. Okay, you don't have to turn it off, but just put it away for the second you start to feel that, because when it's out of mind, it's out of sight. Other way around. When it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So get your phone out of your face if that's the way you're feeling and those are thoughts that are coming into your mind. Just instantly comparing yourself to the successes of other people, to the beauty of other people, like anything. Another thing that I think will shift your mindset is gratitude, prayer if you pray, put your thoughts into perspective. Once again, negativity comes a lot easier. So if we're focused on what we're grateful for, we can also stay focused on what we're grateful for about ourselves. We can point out, the things that we love about ourselves, the things that we're happy for, the things that we have learned to appreciate and learn to love, the same way that I have with my anxiety and things like that, right? So yeah, those are my pieces of advice. I think it's really important to focus on your perception towards yourself, your perception of who you are, and not to be dramatic, but like, if we stay in this negative perception forever, we're going to be so unhappy. And it takes a second of reflection. It takes a second of stepping back and pinpointing the areas of your life that are suffering the most because of this negative perception of yourself. And I talked about relationships and work, but it can be a lot more than just that. So, yeah. I think that's all I have to say on the matter. Oh, also, don't forget to challenge yourself, because I'm sure a lot of us who have thought super negatively about ourselves over the past couple of years haven't put ourselves in situations to grow because we don't think that we're able to thrive in that situation, that we're able to survive or succeed or whatever. Fear gets in the way of so much, and I think fear is one of the biggest outcomes of a negative perception of self. So making sure that you do that and you challenge yourself. And also just remember that even if you don't think you can do it now, you are very much capable of learning, okay? My camera's about to die. This has been a shit show. I hope you guys don't hate it as much as I do. Gotta give myself positive reinforcement. It's okay. Everything's fine. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. I love you guys so much. It's been such a pleasure doing so many seasons with you guys so far, and I hope this season turns out just as good. I love you guys so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.